Welcome back to the Fuki Cafe. This is a special edition with Carolyn Baker, Janaia Donaldson, and myself, Ivey Cone, talking about the times we're in, holding a large framework, feeling your grief so you can feel your joy.
Today, it's a different thing than usual. We have a conversation between three media women with some common interests in mind. So you already know me, Janaia, host of Peak Moment TV. Beside me is Ivey Cone, who is the producer of Fuki Cafe, which you'll find on YouTube. F-U-K-I as in Fukushima, Cafe. Right, wonderful. Well, you can talk about it. And Carolyn Baker, whose daily digestive news is one of my mainstays, author. Her website, carolynbaker.net, you'll find Speaking Truth to Power, but your particular point and books and so on right now are about the ecological apocalypse and relationships in collapse. So here we are, three women who all are aware of imminent collapse of industrial civilization. We are in the midst of the sixth extinction, mass extinction. And thanks to Carolyn, for me, and I think for you as well, you've introduced us to Guy McPherson, a scientist who is compiling all of the catastrophic events in climate change which are happening more quickly and more deeply than anyone had imagined, and is postulating the possible extinction of the human race in the shorter term. Other than that, thank you. I'm glad we could all converse about it, because my question is, how do our viewers grapple with some of the bigger questions here? I mean, yes, you can run and collect the beans and the bullets and whatever to be prepared, but that's not going to help us through some turbulent times. So I'll just toss it out there. Who wants to go with that?
Well, I believe that we're not going to be able to really look at what's happening or prepare for it on any level if we don't have emotional resilience. If we haven't developed the tools that we need to develop to face fear, anger, grief, despair, and other emotions along the way, and be able to communicate with and deeply connect with other human beings, with the earth and with ourselves. And so my work is much about helping people develop these tools. In fact, that's the core of my work, is doing that. I also do publish the Daily News Digest 7 days a week unless I'm traveling, and have for 8 years, because I believe it's really important for people to be informed.
You know, I think it's going to be an incredible journal or chronicle for, if any, whoever survives if we do, to say, look how it unfolded,
Exactly.
for as long as you do that. It's
Yes.
astounding, actually.
It's just like a journal of what has happened in the last few years.
Yeah.
The tools in the toolbox are so, for me, that's where it's at now. Because as we progress with collapse and as we progress with the degradation of the environment, being able to hold center and remain in that place, feel it when we are overwhelmed with grief, or feel it when we're in a point of like being angry over something, to recognize it, feel it, breathe into it, release it, get centered again, in order to be able to be there for the people around us who have not had 10, 12, 20 years of doing the work.
And we need to deeply connect with other people who are doing similar work so that together we can support each other, which will be a lot easier for us than if we're trying to do all of this alone.
I will attest to that, because as Robin and I have been on the road for almost 2 years, and certainly we meet people who are aware of this, and some who are not. The community of two, Robin and I, because we both get it, it's a little thin at times. Because
right.
Something happens. We just did a workshop with you, and having 20 people who get it. First of all of a sudden you don't have to explain, justify, whatever, your awareness of the likelihood, the possibility of. But we're watching unraveling going on all the time around us. But people who get it, who are grieving also, it just makes it easier to find my grief.
Absolutely.
So I'm with you on the need for others who get it, for community, but who are willing to go into the feelings about it. Because most
Absolutely.
of us, it's just easier to stay right here.
Well, I don't think you can really look unless you have those emotional tools. And maybe it's even wise not to look if you don't have those emotional tools. You know, if you don't know how to face your fear, anger, grief, despair, and deal with that, and allow those to be teachers for you, then you might as well be distracted and and zone out in front of the TV or take your favorite drug of choice.
Or just continue life as if this weren't going to affect you.
Right.
And for some people, it may not.
Yeah.
I know that my journal is one of my best friends. It's
Yeah.
a place that I can just pour it out,
Absolutely.
and which is one of the tools, of course, that you recommend. But it's been a friend for 30 years or so. Yeah. You have something, Ivy, that I'd like to suggest. You're running the question about what's relevant. Can you tell us kind of that little exercise you do?
What was relevant last month is not relevant now. And there's 100 points in the course of a day where I'm making this like discerning judgment call, if you will. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I had a deadline to meet. I had to do the extreme weather update, man, and I had to get it in. And I had just enough time, and then I could go to bed reasonable. My daughter stopped by, which is unusual, wanted to hang out with me. She said, "Mom, can we play a hand of canasta?" And it was like, okay, the extreme weather update is no longer relevant for this next hour and a half. It's more relevant for me to sit with my beautiful daughter and just play a mindless game of canasta. That's a small example. And those kinds of, is it relevant or irrelevant in that moment, for me is now happening multiple times a day, making that choice.
Irrelevant in light of in the context of what matter of living your life. Tell me fully, being in the present.
I don't know
relationships.
if guys connecting of the dots and the data that I have additionally gathered around the severity of the abrupt climate change that we're in. I don't know if a year from now or 2 years from now life is going to be settled enough, or even still here, to where I could just with deep contentment sit and play cards with my daughter. We might be trying to figure out if we can find water.
Yeah.
So that's a small example. What's relevant? What's meaningful? What's important? Then there's a bigger what's relevant, irrelevant. And here's another real example. I used to be on the methane data. I was looking for it every day. I wanted to know exactly what was going on. I was following Shakova's work, and I was checking in with Guy's work, and I was looking at this and that, and boy, I was on it. I know the data now. That is no longer relevant for me to be putting my time and energy into knowing more about the status of the methane that is releasing.
I really want to respond to that because in my life coaching, I work with many people who do that same sort of thing every single day. I want one more piece of science. I want one more piece of data, to validate, because they don't have people to talk to. And it's sort of like the computer and the worst scenario has become their best friend. And so, sometimes I sort of have to help people get away from that. And it's become almost an addiction.
Yes.
And the way that I suggest is that people become, if they're going to be addicted to anything, to be addicted to being in nature. And I teach people how to be in nature, sensually, feeling, smelling, touching, tasting, and experiencing what I call earth eroticism.
Yes.
And changing the whole picture. Because what more do you need to know? If you've read all this research, if you're up to speed, you don't need to know anything else. As a matter of fact, I believe that on a deeper level, we do know. We do know how bad it is. The whole culture knows how bad it is, which is why the culture is insane.
And in huge denial.
Yes.
Because it's going to be a whole lot more comfortable to not to not have, I mean, it means you have to change your life, or at least your inner,
Exactly.
response to that. And it's like, that is so threatening to people. I mean, part of why I'm so glad we could do this outdoors here at Lone Bobcat
Yeah.
Woods is because, I mean, this is the centering, and there's something, I mean, even if it's just a city park where people can be, our cells know we came from this.
Exactly.
And this will continue in some form. I mean, even if all the mammals go extinct, and even if most of the plants except for the bacteria go extinct, this is home.
Yes.
This is home.
Absolutely.
Amidst the weeds and a few birds that sing or whatever. That's a fabulous suggestion, because I know that what do I say? The appeal is like more information, not because I need to know it anymore, but because there's a kind of addiction to the catastrophizing that our culture does, because all of the movies are all about
Right.
dangers and crises and how do we solve it, and this isn't just something we're going to solve. This is a predicament we're all going to live through. I'm appreciating that, because for me, when it's when I'm uncomfortable, I can't stay angry when I'm out in the woods. It's like, even without making a sound, it's like it just sort of washes through. Washes through. It's great advice.
And that reminds me of something that you had said in an earlier conversation, which I think is an important piece to the three of us being here, and that is, if one embraces at all the notion that human life forms, as well as the many other species that are going extinct, were to go extinct, what then is the human legacy? What is it that we're leaving? What remains? And for me, sitting and watching the hummingbird get nectar out of my red geranium, I am just so in resonance with that hummingbird and with the red geranium, and just merging with life on this planet in that moment, that honoring and that awareness is what perhaps that essence of that conscious awareness weaves into the life systems. That's for me what I'm leaving. That's why I'm so dedicated now to not going getting more data, but to sit quietly and do nothing except watch hummingbirds or watch the bug crawl on the rock.
And the other thing that you're talking about too, that I think is so important, is appreciating beauty and creating beauty, and really experiencing deep joy. And one way that I know we can experience deep joy, this sounds paradoxical, and it is through really becoming friends with our grief. Because grief and joy, grief and gratitude travel together.
When you first said that, it's like, is that right? I had to sort of watch my experience on that one, and I find that to be true. Is that when I allow myself to feel the grief, right, instead of just distracting myself away from that, I never come through that with tears or with writing. Never the same. Something gets lifted, right?
Yeah.
And I come to this moment, in fact, of just appreciating that I'm alive and can be yet aware of it, and so grateful to just have moments, just this moment, and this moment, and this friend. As Robin said the other day, he says, I am so grateful to be on a habitable planet in this corner of the universe at this time. And it's like, we are at a time unprecedented. So at the very least, we get to be, what, witnesses?
Yes.
Witnesses.
Yes, bearing witness.
Exactly.
To, I mean, the question for me is like, what's the human experiment? If you look from the Gaian perspective, from the planet's perspective, what's this little fairly recent critter with, opposable thumbs and beginnings of self-reflection, but still really kind of adolescent, still really stuck in survival and domination and so on. I do run that question. It's like, what are the powers of the universe, if you will, or the creators? Sometimes I imagine them sitting here and saying, That was a really interesting experiment, and look at some of the wonderful things they've created, and look at some of the horrible damage they've created. Interesting. We'll learn from that for the next round with on another
Right,
planet
right.
or wherever. I mean,
It's that really, taking it to the largest possible perspective that I can hold, that large cosmological framework. And, you mentioned Powers of the Universe, of course, Brian Swimm's work, which has been invaluable for me.
Me too.
Just, his Powers of the Universe series, I've some of those discs I've almost worn out. I've listened to them and watched them so many times. Helps enormously to be able to put that large perspective.
can you give us I'm going to interrupt you a little bit of it because I haven't yet gone through it. I know the names of some, but what are the powers of the universe?
Well, between Carolyn and I, we can probably remember them. He starts with 0, which is seamlessness. And I don't remember the second one.
It doesn't need to be the order, but they're qualities or energies.
They're
or
qualities of all life in the universe,
How the universe functions and manifests and
and how we do too. And what really the purpose of this DVD series is to help us work with these powers. That these powers actually need conscious self-awareness in order to continue, and we become more consciously self-aware as we work with these powers and endeavor to embody them in our lives.
There's in your book, Extinction Dialogues, that you co-authored with Guy McPherson. I had no idea that you had included and referenced Brian's material there, and I was overjoyed when I found it. And I actually would like to take a moment and refer to 2 of those from your book.
Okay.
If you don't
Sure.
mind.
Sure. No, absolutely.
Because for me, these are 2 that I feel very engaged with at this time on this planet. Number 3, emergence. Emergence is exemplified in moments of birth in the universe, such as when atoms are formed, stars and galaxies come forth, and various forms of advanced life show up. Emergence also takes place at the end of one era and the birth of another.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
And then my very most favorite of all of them, number 5. I have a good friend, Mary Nelson, and I can say to her, I've been having to hang out with number 5 a lot recently, and she just knows exactly what I'm talking about. Cataclysm.
Yes, mine too. That's my favorite.
Is it? Yeah. Cataclysm is synonymous with the realities of destruction, degradation, and collapse. Every 100 million years, there has been a mass extinction, and we are presently living in the midst of one. Hence, the second law of thermodynamics. Things fall apart and break down. Life in the universe constantly rises and falls.
Cataclysm.
And this from a mathematical cosmologist, also a quantum physicist.
Yeah, and I appreciate that his tying together consciousness, our lives, because I'm sure all the powers of the universe are happening all in our lives.
Thank you for letting me share. The thing that struck me this morning driving out here is how, as you had mentioned about the stages of grief, you just don't go through them in a linear fashion, and you're sort of weaving in and out of many of them simultaneously. It's the same thing with these
Exactly.
11. It's not like you do allurement, and then you're done with allurement, and you move to emergence, and then you're done with emergence, and then you go through cataclysm. No. There's this swirl and flow of one takes precedence, and then it subsides. Which brings me back to what's relevant and what's irrelevant. That large framework allows me to say to myself, the heck with Extinction Radio's deadline. I'm going to sit with my daughter and play cards and drink a cup of tea. And these are the kinds of tools. I think having the ability to look, notice, be aware, and make those kinds of decisions, sit and be with someone who's in complete devastation, maybe just found out some piece of information that has changed their life, as you say. They have no choice. They're going to have to deal with this information. To be there with them, just to listen and to hold that space, that is an incredibly important tool for people to have in their toolbox. Just sit and listen.
Well, that's why a lot of people contact me for coaching, because they have no one to talk to. Or maybe they're very aware of what's happening and their partner doesn't want to hear about it. Or maybe they're so compelled by what they now have learned that they want to completely reinvent themselves and do something different, something that really expresses their meaning and purpose, and so they want some help with that. Lots of reasons. But back to the powers of the universe, these are not just the powers of the universe, but they're powers that we need to be living and practicing every day and incorporating in our lives. And for me, seeing life through those 10 powers.
Yeah. Now, we're probably not going to get, everybody out there to sit and listen to 11 hours of Brian
Of course
swim.
not. No. But I did write a whole chapter on the powers of the universe for my latest book, Love in the Age of Ecological Apocalypse. So there's a whole chapter in there.
So you've included that as well as in the extinction.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Carolyn. You're
Yeah.
bringing it forth. We need that.
Yes, yeah.
And also, although, swim does an incredible job of stepping down these very complex notions into lay language, and you have taken it into an even more accessible form.
Yeah, I think that's important to try to,
you translate
back away
it for
from,
us.
to translate, from
Right,
the scientific language.
Right. We need human, the human accessible language. Yeah, I mean, your books are just rich with all kinds of, from the very beginning, from Sacred Demise, tools for reflection, questions to consider.
Good for study groups in that respect.
Yes,
excellent that way.
it is. It occurs to me that question, I'm going back to the question of people that don't have someone to talk with about this. And it seems to me that that's a need that's growing, is some forms of, and each area will find their own way, of groups that can meet periodically simply to be present for one another, just to be hearing each other, allowing each other to grieve, to rage, to just, that need has probably always been there in civilization. Since we were torn out of or taken out of our tribal communities, where that was probably the natural way of life.
Absolutely.
And
this weekend, you attended one of my workshops in Nevada City as we were talking about all of these topics, and you talked about how important it is for you, how much you were longing to have some kind of group where you could talk about this on a regular basis, and I totally support you. I had such a group in Boulder, Colorado for about 6 years, and it sort of evolved into a different direction. But wherever people can create these kind of little communities for even short periods of time, it's really important.
like the powers of the universe, rising and falling. But
Yeah,
thank you for that, because I do better, getting to grieve held, to be held, in a
That
safe,
definitely, for
safe
sure.
space.
Yeah.
I've certainly done personal work and gone into very deep grief, so I have experienced that I didn't drown.
Right.
And so I can hold a tether line for other people who are afraid that they might just drown and be lost there forever, because I know, no, we do come through.
Well, if you don't have support for the grieving process, it's not safe. It really
It's
isn't.
safe to do it by yourself,
Yeah.
generally.
That's what the whole culture has told us for, forever, is go off and do it by yourself. Grief becomes privatized.
Yes.
And so we go off and do it by ourselves, and nobody to support us, and then we kind of come out of our good cry, whatever that is, and feel alone. We're still alone. We're not held.
It's a very incomplete way
There.
of
I
grieving.
think that's
Yes.
true. It
Yes.
feels to me like there's still going to be a residual, even if, there's still going to be something when it's no longer, what is it, a grief shared is half the grief. A grief alone is double, 3 times as
It's an
dramatic.
honoring. There's that honoring and being acknowledged and known, and the safety factor is so important. And for those of us who are kind of up to speed on this and need that kind of support, a place where the other persons in the room are there, as it were. I see those individuals, yes, needing that support, yes, needing that acknowledgement and safe space. But that's also, in my opinion, so that they can effectively go out and be the hospice workers because all around us are individuals whose lives are going to be changing in very dramatic ways, who are not equipped, who have not done any kind of personal work, and we need to be able to hold their hand and be there for them
Yes.
and
Yes.
give them safe space in whatever stage of awareness they're at, because that grief and that terror is very real, and they need it. They need us to be able to be centered and grounded and hold space for them.
Yeah.
So I really look at us all as hospice workers now.
I do too. I do too. Yeah.
We have 2 minutes, ladies.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, this has just gone like a great dance, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Time
Anything
flies when you're
burning?
having so much fun
That's
as we are.
right. Talking about the end of the world and grief and support and love. I mean, really, that's what we're talking about. We're
Grief
talking
is
about
love. Grieving is love, and I believe that the most important thing I think we can be doing right now is grieving. I believe the earth is begging us to grieve, and being able to do that for each other and with each other is the greatest gift we have. It's truly love.
And as was mentioned, grief and joy
Travel together.
travel together. And when one is able to fully, deeply grieve, one is able to deeply be in joy.
Absolutely.
And otherwise you're in that like limbo zone.
A
Yeah,
flatline
yeah.
culture, they call it.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, don't feel. Yeah. Well, and it gets down to the root of denying death. I mean, that's a piece of the grief. I mean, you were mentioned from Francis Weller that everything I have loved,
I will
will
lose.
lose.
Yeah.
I will lose my perception of all of this body, these relationships. I will lose everything I love. And that's an invitation for me not to love less,
Right.
but to grieve that loss, anticipatory, grieve that there are fewer black-headed grosbeaks coming each winter, each spring.
And then just
But
be
then to
in
be
the,
so grateful
Yeah.
because the Pleiades just showed up again, and you are here, and we are community, even just for these few moments.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. This is a precious.
this is
Thank you.
just a lovely,
Precious.
precious moment.
It is.
I love you like a sister, I love you like a friend. We've known each other from the beginning of the end. Our dance flows together like the hawks on the wind, listening to the spirit within. Women of destiny, let your praises be to the one who gives you life. Women of destiny, let your praises be filled with truth and light. Our hearts beat together, though the miles in between may as well be infinity. The rhythm of our song, like the waves of the sea, strengthen and heal me. Women of destiny, let your praises be to the one who gives you life. Women of destiny, let your praises be filled with truth and light. I love you like a sister, I love you like a friend. We've known each other from the beginning of the end. Our dance flows together like the hawks on the wind, listening to the spirit within. Women of destiny, let your praises be to the one who gives you life. Women of destiny, let your praises be filled with truth and light. Women of destiny, let your praises be to the one who gives you life. Women of destiny, let your praises be filled with truth and light.